Have you ever been, mid-conversation? Maybe you're trying to clarify a point with a colleague
Yeah.
or even just asking for directions, and you feel like the English coming at you or coming out of you just doesn't quite match?
It doesn't match the clean, simple lessons from the textbook.
Exactly. You get the words, but you totally miss the flow.
That feeling is pretty much universal for language learners. It's that gap between knowing the vocabulary and then, knowing how to actually apply it functionally.
In the messy real world.
And the
Yeah.
messy, high-speed reality of everyday life, right? So maybe you've struggled to sound natural, or you wanted your emails to reflect how confident you really are, or you just needed to understand those rapid-fire sentences.
Especially with an accent you haven't really practiced with before.
Uh-huh.
Well, if that struggle resonates with you at all, that push to sound genuinely fluent and not just, grammatically correct, then this deep dive is, well, it's engineered for you. We took a whole stack of sources you provided, all focused on how to move past that frustrating textbook English stage.
Right. And into the realm of natural, intuitive communication.
So our mission today is pretty laser focused.
It is. This deep dive is basically your shortcut to mastering functional English. We're going to systematically absorb the natural rhythm, the critical expressions, and the structures that people use in real life in high-stakes and low-stakes moments.
So we're transforming that passive knowledge into something active.
Active, applicable fluency. That's the goal.
Okay, so let's unpack this. The engine driving all of this really is the power of listening to and analyzing real stories.
Big stories.
And why stories?
Mm-hmm.
Because they're just full of this practical, raw language that's so rich in context and tone.
Language you just won't find in a formal lesson.
No way. They don't just teach you what to say, they teach you how and, crucially, when to say it. And that helps you boost your comprehension and ultimately make your own writing sound so much more authentic.
Okay, so let's jump right into the crucible of communication.
The high-pressure, low-time situations.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The moments where that textbook formality just it grinds to a halt. The sources gave us a fantastic and very common scenario about urgency.
Right, so picture this. You're running late for a big internal meeting. Your phone buzzes. It's an unexpected, urgent message from a colleague. They need critical input on something right now. You have, what, maybe 60 seconds to reply before you have to walk into that boardroom.
That heart-pounding scenario is precisely why we need functional language.
Yeah.
You can't afford to sit there and draft a detailed, clause-heavy reply.
No time.
You need a phrase that does three things instantly.
Well,
1, acknowledges the message. 2, maintains your professionalism. And 3, it buys you time without sounding weak or evasive.
and the phrase that came out of that high-stakes situation, a phrase that should be just foundational for any advanced learner, is the simple, elegant.
I'll get back to you on that.
It's perfect, isn't it?
It's a masterclass in functional communication. I mean, just notice the economy of the words.
Right.
By saying that, you instantly show your colleague, okay, I've got your request. I'm going to address it later.
And you're managing their expectations. That's key.
That's the crucial part. You haven't committed to a timeline, just to the action. So it frames the delay proactively.
Yeah.
It's the linguistic equivalent of hitting a professional pause button.
I wonder, though, what happens if a learner, relying on those old textbook habits, defaults to something way more formal, like, I shall revert to you with my response at a later time.
Oh, that's a brilliant point. And that contrast just highlights the whole problem with textbook English.
Right.
While it's grammatically perfect, a phrase like, I shall revert to you, sounds incredibly stiff, almost robotic, especially in a fast-paced internal chat. It just lacks that natural conversational cadence of, I'll get back to you.
It feels translated.
It does. The goal of functional English is efficiency and authenticity. That long, formal version. It just wastes time and energy, and it signals you might be translating directly from another language instead of speaking instinctively.
Okay, so that's the firm professional delay. What about a variation? Maybe one that implies you only need a minute or two, or you want to sound a little more open.
That brings us to the second essential phrase. Let me quickly check and get back to you.
A bit more casual.
It's slightly more casual, yeah, but still highly effective. It adds this subtle hint that the information they need isn't, deeply buried somewhere. You just need a moment to confirm the details.
So what's the broader takeaway here for the learner with these kinds of phrases?
The takeaway is that these two phrases, I'll get back to you on that, let me quickly check, they're fluidly transferable. They work in a work email, a quick text, a conversation with a friend who asks a complex question.
even negotiating with customer service.
Absolutely. They are functional language tools because they're common in all contexts, and they let you manage time and professionalism at the same time.
Yes.
When time is scarce, functional language is really the only language that works.
For sure. And that fluency you get from absorbing these patterns, it lets you deploy them almost instinctively, which is, I mean, that's the hallmark of advanced competence, right?
It is.
Now, let's pivot. A completely different, lower stakes, but I think equally challenging scenario, handling minor problems politely. Specifically, the classic grocery store mistake.
Ah, yes. The receipt discrepancy.
We'd all been there.
Oh, yeah. You're checking out. You notice the item you grabbed was on sale for $5, but the receipt says $7. It's a minor confrontation, but it requires some finesse.
You have to be clear and direct, but also polite enough to not create this, like, unnecessary conflict.
Right.
And the functional language here, according to the sources, was just crucial. The phrase they used was spot on.
It was. Excuse me. I think there's been a mistake with this item. Can you double check the price for me?
Let's break that down. The mechanics of that sentence are, it's a masterpiece of hedging.
It is a key technique to soften strong statements. The speaker starts with, excuse me, which is just a social lubricant. It signals the start of an inquiry.
And then comes the key. I think there's been a mistake.
Yes. They're not accusing the cashier of making an error. They're framing it as a mutual discovery. Like, oh, look, there might be an oversight here.
That, I think, is so important. It just stops the other person from immediately getting defensive.
Exactly. It gently transfers the blame to the system, not the person. And the ending is the perfect example of functional English for getting a resolution.
Can you double-check the price for me?
It's polite, non-demanding, and gives them a clear, actionable instruction.
Right. Verify the price. It replaces that potentially accusatory language like, you charged me the wrong price, with something much more collaborative.
I would argue that understanding that structure, that functional structure of a polite inquiry, is probably half the battle in these moments.
For sure. The other half is just getting over the stress of a potential confrontation. And listening to how native speakers navigate these moments, well, it makes the whole situation less stressful because the language just comes out smoothly, confidently.
It absolutely does. And this functional skill transitions perfectly into our next area of focus. Because these real-life phrases are so effective and clear, they just slide seamlessly from a spoken conversation into clear, authentic writing.
They reinforce the fundamental structure of clear communication.
Exactly, regardless of the medium you're using.
And this is where we see the immediate, practical payoff of listening. The sources really highlight that a lot of advanced learners struggle with writing naturally.
Oh, a huge struggle. Their emails, proposals, requests, they often sound wooden or overly elaborate.
Or they use this archaic, hyper-formal vocabulary that, I mean, let's be honest, native speakers abandoned decades ago.
Yeah, that's a common trap. The underlying issue is often this fear of sounding unprofessional, which leads to this over-reliance on dictionary-style language. Learners assume written English must be stiff.
Right. But when you absorb the natural flow of spoken English, you realize that clarity and directness are paramount, even in professional writing.
Yes, absolutely.
So let's use that grocery store scenario again to illustrate the transformation from, casual speech to a formal written inquiry, but keeping that same integrity and tone.
Okay.
So the spoken inquiry was, excuse me, I think there's been a mistake with this item. How do we formalize that into an email?
Well, we keep the structure. Polite, clear, direct, and slightly hedged. But we elevate the vocabulary and the syntax. So you'd write something like, Dear store name customer service, I recently made a purchase at your location, and I noticed that the advertised price of one of the items was higher than what was charged on the receipt.
And then the request.
Could you kindly verify the price for me at your earliest convenience?
What's so remarkable is the consistency there. The spoken practice of being polite and direct just reinforces the written form. We didn't have to reinvent the structure at all.
Wow.
We just replaced, can you double check with, could you kindly verify, and then added the necessary formal markers like the opening and closing.
Precisely. The goal isn't to sound like some 19th century diplomat. It's to sound like a competent, modern communicator. Listening to real-life dialogue teaches you that successful communication, even in writing, is based on efficiency and courtesy.
So you're replicating a successful communication style rather than, struggling to translate some complex sentence in your head.
Exactly.
But hold on. If we encourage the learner to make their professional emails more conversational, don't we risk them, I don't know, losing authority or accidentally crossing the line into language that's too casual?
That is the essential friction point.
Mm-hmm.
And it's where the advanced learner really needs to focus. The boundary is usually defined by, I'd say, three things: contractions, idiomatic complexity, and sentence structure. In speech, we rely heavily on contractions. You've got to. In professional writing, you should generally use the full form. I will. We have.
And you'd avoid super specific slang, I imagine.
Oh, absolutely. Avoid highly context-dependent slang or complex idioms that might just confuse the reader.
So we're aiming for conversational flow and directness in the writing, but we're maintaining standard formal grammar, no contractions, no excessive slang.
Exactly. And the most significant difference you learn from listening is actually related to syntax. Spoken English often uses shorter sentences. It relies less on all those subordinate clauses. When you apply that rhythm to your writing, your professional communication becomes much easier to scan, it's clearer and more impactful. It's not this dense, convoluted paragraph.
It's about absorbing those subtle nuances. For example, knowing when to use the polite conditional "could you please" when you're asking for something from a superior, versus the more direct "can you" that you'd use with familiar colleagues.
Right.
That's intuitive knowledge. It's built entirely from hearing the language used in context.
And that subtle knowledge it's everything. Think about how someone asks a stranger for a favor. Excuse me, could you possibly spare a moment to help me with this?
Very polite.
That structure signals high deference. If you hear that structure, you internalize the contextual rule. Use "could you possibly" when you're imposing on a stranger. It's practical, functional grammar that just feels right because you've heard it used successfully.
It really is about building up that internal phrase bank so your speaking and your writing they flow with this authentic ease. You can adapt fluidly to the context.
We've mastered time pressure and minor conflict. Now let's get to the most volatile element of communication: emotional pressure. Real-life conversations are absolutely crucial here because they teach the learner how to balance these strong, disruptive emotions like stress, panic, acute frustration with the absolute need for clear, constructive communication.
This is a massive hurdle. I mean, when your adrenaline is spiking, your language just defaults to the most basic available structure.
Right.
And if that structure is rigid textbook grammar, you really struggle to convey the necessary nuance of urgency without sounding either vague or just hysterical.
Right.
So let's revisit that anecdote from the source about the missing presentation.
Yes. This was a scenario just loaded with anxiety. The speaker was rushing to an end-of-day meeting, only to realize the crucial presentation file was just gone from the laptop.
That sudden realization of catastrophe.
Yeah.
And that moment when your heart starts racing and your focus just collapses, it demands a controlled response.
Yeah.
And the speaker managed to call their colleague and articulate the problem using this really controlled emotional expression.
I'm in a bit of a panic right now. I can't find the presentation file. Can you help me figure this out quickly?
Let's focus on that first phrase. I'm in a bit of a panic right now.
It's a perfect example of a controlled expression of stress. It signals high worry, but the use of that little softener, in a bit of a panic, it prevents the communication from dissolving into unproductive drama.
It keeps the focus. It basically tells the listener, my emotion is high, but my mental focus is still on finding a solution.
It's a linguistic instruction, isn't it? It instructs the colleague on how to respond. It says, I need help, but I'm still standing.
Exactly. Because if the speaker had just screamed, the presentation is gone, the colleague might panic too.
For sure. By using that controlled expression, they communicate the seriousness of the situation while framing the conversation around a shared problem they can solve together.
And the request that follows is just as productive and functional. Can you help me figure this out quickly? Clear, direct, collaborative, and non-demanding.
This functional phrasing is part of a broader emotional toolkit that fluent English speakers deploy to manage stressful situations in a public or professional way.
Right. There's a whole spectrum of these phrases.
There is. On the less intense side, you have, I'm feeling a little overwhelmed right now. Moving up a bit, you might say, I'm under a lot of pressure today.
And if things are really falling apart,
I need to take a breather. I'm feeling completely swamped.
that swamped is another great natural phrase. It conveys that feeling of being overwhelmingly busy without resorting to some, overly technical vocabulary.
Absolutely. The learner has to internalize the difference between saying, I have too many tasks, which is very literal, versus the much more evocative and authentic, I'm completely swamped.
That emotional depth is what listening provides.
It is.
So why does this balance matter so much for communication effectiveness?
It matters because communication isn't just about exchanging facts. It's about managing social relationships. When you, the learner, hear these emotional management phrases and stories, you internalize the social contract they represent.
Ah,
You learn how to express frustration productively. And that makes it easier to navigate those moments of high stress without jeopardizing the clarity or professionalism of your message. Only real-life exposure can teach you that nuanced blend of feeling and function.
okay, so let's move to a skill that really separates the competent speaker from the truly fluent, advanced communicator.
The ability to switch registers.
Exactly. Knowing precisely when and how to adapt your language based on your audience, whether you're talking to a close friend, emailing a new boss, or addressing a public audience.
This is a profound challenge because most formal instruction teaches a default, and it's often a highly formal register. So learners often struggle with de-escalating their language, making it appropriately casual.
Or the reverse, knowing how to elevate their language for a serious professional setting.
Right. Fluency demands adapting the how, the tone, the formality, the word choice, just as much as what you intend to communicate.
We have a perfect contrast from the source material for this, recommending a new restaurant. Let's start with the informal register. You're talking to a friend who's planning a casual dinner.
In that intimate, casual setting, the language is kinetic, it's enthusiastic. You'd hear contractions, imperative structures, and expressive adjectives. Phrases like, you've got to check this place out.
Yeah, that's a common one.
The speaker might describe the food as killer or amazing, and the atmosphere is so relaxed. The critical functional language here is that strong imperative, you've got to check this place out. It's highly informal, and it indicates comfort and shared enthusiasm.
Okay, now let's take that same exact subject, recommending the restaurant, but shift the audience dramatically. You're talking to a potential business partner you've just met at a networking event.
The linguistic shift is immediate and deliberate. It focuses on respect and measured observation. You switch to, I would highly recommend this restaurant to you.
The vocabulary changes completely.
It does. The food becomes exceptional, and the setting is described with more formal adjectives. The ambiance creates a very inviting atmosphere, conducive to a great conversation.
The functional difference between, you've got to check this place out, and I would highly recommend this restaurant to you it's enormous.
It is. One is an expression of shared enthusiasm, the other is an offer of considered professional advice.
And this requires a deep analysis of that shift.
Well, the business version uses conditional language, I would recommend, instead of an imperative. It replaces a simple word like amazing with a more sophisticated choice like exceptional. These shifts, which involve everything from syntax to vocabulary, are crucial for demonstrating competence across different settings.
This reminds me of the classic failure mode for learners, failing to adapt the register. What happens if the speaker uses the informal register with the business partner?
It could be a disaster. If you tell a potential client, hey, you've got to check out this killer spot, you risk undermining your credibility immediately.
Yeah, that would not go over well.
The client might perceive you as unprofessional or too familiar, or maybe lacking the measured judgment required for business.
Yep.
The subtle changes we hear in real life are what protect our social and professional standing.
So let's look at a quick comparative example. 3 functional ways to recommend something, just to illustrate that spectrum of formality.
Okay, number 1, informal, strong encouragement. You absolutely have to try their new coffee blend. It's got heavy emphasis, very conversational.
Okay, number 2.
Number 2, neutral, polite suggestion. I might suggest trying their coffee blend. It's quite good. It's softened, versatile for new colleagues or clients.
And then the really formal one.
Formal professional endorsement. I would strongly endorse the new blend, as it has received exceptional feedback. That has an elevated lexicon. It's suitable for a report or a conversation with a senior person.
That spectrum shows that fluency isn't just knowing the word recommend. It's knowing how to shape the entire sentence around that relationship dynamic.
Exactly. The bigger picture here is internalizing the idea that the same core meaning can take on wildly different forms depending on the context.
Right. Think about business language.
Well, you have. We'd like to discuss potential collaborations for the upcoming year. It's structured, professional, formal.
Whereas the casual equivalent, talking to a friend about a side hustle, is just, hey, we should totally work together next year. Let's make that happen.
Right. And listening to these real-life shifts provides the necessary instinct to adjust your language appropriately. It makes you sound confident and completely fluent, whether you're relaxing with a close friend or sitting across the table from a distant business partner.
All right, now we are entering the advanced toolkit. This is the payoff section. We're going to extract specific, high-value phrases and structures from the sources across a whole spectrum of everyday events and major life milestones.
This is about internalizing these ready-made structures to achieve fluency. This is the language of action, negotiation, reflection, and change. And these structures really reveal how fluent speakers manage complex social and professional demands. #A, social interactions and communication grace.
Let's start with one of the hardest social tasks, expressing opinions clearly and confidently, especially when you disagree with someone. The sources provided a fantastic functional structure for this. Always acknowledge the other person's point first, and then introduce your contrasting perspective using hedging.
This is fundamental to polite discourse. It's about saving face for the other party. The example was about discussing a movie.
Right.
I totally got why you feel that way about the ending, but personally, I think the movie's pacing was a bit slow in the middle sections.
That opening. I totally get why you feel that way. That is the social glue. It's polite, it's respectful, and it validates their viewpoint, even if you're about to contradict it.
And notice the triple layer of linguistic hedging they used to soften the critique. First, personally, I think, which clearly signals it's a subjective opinion.
Okay.
Second, the verb think rather than knows or asserts. That softens the claim. And third, the specific adjective a bit slow instead of, terrible or boring.
Right. It minimizes the severity.
Exactly. That pattern knowledge plus hedge plus personal view is essential for sounding natural and confident while maintaining social grace.
Okay, next up, sharing personal anecdotes. The kind of engaging storytelling that makes conversation flow at, say, a coffee shop. The source shared a story about accidentally ordering a confusingly complicated coffee drink.
Right. Anecdotes require functional, relatable language that injects personality. The speaker used phrases like, "I decided to treat myself to something fancy today."
Treat myself, that's a classic.
It is. It's classic self-indulgent language. And then after realizing their mistake with the order, the speaker reflexively said, "Well, I guess I'm trying something new today."
That reflective, self-deprecating humor, "I guess I'm trying something new today," is key. It transforms a simple error into an engaging, relatable story moment. Learners really need to absorb these phrases to move beyond just stating facts.
To actually telling a story. I mean, think about the alternative. Just saying, "I bought the wrong coffee" is, well, it's boring. Using that reflective language makes the moment vivid and lets the listener connect emotionally.
And what about simple, functional clarity, like giving directions? That requires immediate, actionable language.
Oh, clarity is king here.
Yeah.
The source example with a masterclass in directness and reassurance. Just keep walking straight until you see the big fountain. The library is right behind it. You can't miss it.
You can't miss it. That's the critical functional phrase. It's an assurance, a promise that the landmark is prominent. It simplifies the task for the person asking.
It does.
All right, finally for this section, networking and small talk, the terror of so many language learners. What does an effective, natural, functional introduction sound like?
The source provided an ideal script. "Hi, I'm Lucy. I just moved here and thought this event would be a great way to meet new people. How about you? What brings you here tonight?"
That script is brilliant because of its structure. It covers identity, provides context for why you're there, "I just moved here," which automatically invites questions and empathy.
And most critically, it ends with a clear, open-ended question. What brings you here tonight? It instantly shifts the focus to the other person, invites them to share their own story.
Which takes all the pressure off you as the introducer.
Exactly. This is functional language designed not just to transmit information, but to facilitate a reciprocal social exchange. If you use that structure, you're going to appear confident and socially adept. #B. Navigating life milestones and change.
Okay, real life involves major transitions, and English has specific, powerful, often idiomatic language for discussing risk, growth, and adjustment.
Let's start with career changes, leaving stability for something new, like switching to graphic design. You need language that conveys the gravity of that decision and the inherent risk involved.
So how do fluent speakers articulate the motivation for leaving a steady job?
They use phrases that express dissatisfaction or a lack of fulfillment, often paired with hedging. Things like, I just couldn't see myself doing it forever, or I realized I needed a fresh start.
And the language for the action itself.
That's highly idiomatic. I finally took the leap. That idiom took the leap is the perfect evocative shorthand for a courageous, risky career move. It implies a jump into the unknown.
And what about the ongoing adjustment period?
They often frame it as a continuous process, which is reassuring to the listener. I'm still adjusting to the different work culture, but I'm enjoying the steep learning curve.
Ugh. Steep learning curve. That's a good one. It's functional business language that shows you're embracing the challenge, not just struggling with it.
It is. And the same emotional depth is required for entrepreneurship. You need to convey both the struggle and the excitement of building something from scratch.
The sources really detailed the full emotional roller coaster of that.
They did. The initial difficulty is often conveyed with direct, hard-hitting phrases. It wasn't easy at first, and I had to learn everything on my own, from marketing to accounting. That communicates the sheer scope of the early struggle.
And how is the satisfaction communicated? The moment of triumph.
It's often framed in terms of payoff and justification. When I got my first major client, it made all the hard work worth it.
Right.
Or, I'm incredibly excited about the future of my business. We just need to nail down the next funding round. That blend of excitement and technical business vocabulary is vital.
Next, the really profound experience of moving to a new country. It's full of shock, difficulty, and adjustment.
And the language reflects that overwhelm accurately. A newcomer might say, when I first moved here, I was overwhelmed. I had to learn everything from scratch.
From scratch, that really captures the necessity of relearning basic daily life.
It does. And the emotional reality often includes explicit expressions of loneliness. There were times when I felt really homesick, especially during the holidays.
And the ongoing process of integration.
It's described with continuous action verbs. I'm still getting used to the pace of the city, or I'm slowly adapting to the different style of humor here. Listening to these accounts gives a learner a ready-made script for discussing their own complex feelings about relocation.
Finally, let's talk about setting goals, like New Year's resolutions. This is all about intention and commitment, so it requires aspirational language.
You hear phrases of intention using strong verbs and definitive commitment markers. I want to focus intently on getting in shape this year.
Or something even firmer.
Firmer decision-making language, yeah. I've decided to learn a new language this year, maybe Korean. The determination is then sealed with phrases like, I know it's going to be challenging, but I'm committed to following through.
That use of following through shows determination and willpower. It's a key part of goal-setting language.
It is. Hashtag CSE. Modern topics and cultural insights.
Okay, the functional language toolkit also has to extend to modern cultural topics that demand really specific contextual vocabulary. Let's start with the digital nomad lifestyle.
A lifestyle that involves a delicate balance of freedom and inherent challenges.
Exactly. You need the language to articulate both sides.
Right. The positive side is often expressed using vocabulary of autonomy. I love the freedom it gives me to choose my hours and my location. But the downside is articulated just as clearly, using specific terms related to remote work.
Such as?
Sometimes I struggle with isolation, and I miss the social atmosphere of a regular office or co-working space.
That distinction between the office and the co-working space is a perfect example of functional vocabulary you wouldn't find in older textbooks.
And you often hear phrases about managing the mechanics of the lifestyle, like, I try to optimize my workflow around different time zones, or I'm currently on a visa run to renew my paperwork.
These are highly specific, functional terms that immediately signal fluency within this niche global community. Okay, moving to academia. What about the experience of the U.S. education system for a newcomer? What language captures those unique cultural and academic expectations?
The sources highlight a common cultural shock related to independence. A student might express surprise. At first, I was shocked by how much freedom students have here in terms of choosing their classes.
And this contrasts sharply with the expectation.
Exactly. However, you're expected to take initiative and proactively manage your schedule, which was new to me.
And the pressure inherent in that system.
That is articulated very directly and functionally. The workload is intense, and the grading curve is steep. These phrases reveal the academic norms instantly. They give you a template for discussing academic structure and stress in a concise, knowledgeable way.
Social media is another area where nuanced, specific language is crucial, especially for articulating critique or emotional fatigue.
People are definitely articulating fatigue now, using phrases that reflect digital burnout and comparison culture. You hear frustration about monetization.
Right.
I've been getting tired of all the sponsored posts. It feels like every third story is a blatant sales pitch. That term, sales pitch, is functional business critique.
And what about the emotional toll of seeing all these edited lives?
This is where we get that culturally specific, high-value idiom, the highlight reel. Someone
Okay.
suffering from comparison might say, I see these influencers posting pictures of their perfect lives, and I start feeling inadequate, but then I remind myself that they're only showing the highlight reel.
That phrase, highlight reel, it summarizes a whole complex psychological phenomenon in just 2 words. If a learner doesn't know that, they miss the entire context of the conversation.
It's an essential idiom for modern fluency. It's the linguistic shortcut.
Okay, finally, let's look at sustainable living. The language of personal commitment and behavior change.
This involves language that signals conscious choice and gradualism.
Right.
We hear phrases like, I started intentionally buying more sustainable, locally sourced products. That indicates the initial step. But the key functional phrase is the philosophical insight that drives sustained action.
Which is?
I've realized that small, consistent changes can really add up over time, and specific actions are described naturally. I started composting at home to reduce my overall waste footprint.
The functional language there is focused on verbs of intention and the vocabulary of environmental impact. Waste footprint, locally sourced. The sheer depth of all these scenarios really confirms that fluency isn't achieved by memorizing word lists. It's about having a functional, phrase-based vocabulary ready for any real-life situation. Whether you're buying time professionally, discussing the challenges of remote work, or politely disagreeing about a movie. #tag outro.
So, as we've explored today, the true immense value of listening to and analyzing real-life stories is that they allow you, the learner, to absorb the natural rhythm and flow of English. You move past merely recognizing vocabulary, and you start to develop an intuitive sense of how language is deployed effectively.
We've seen how this story-based approach lets you internalize these crucial skills, how people navigate challenges, express emotions with control, switch formality registers fluidly.
And structure disagreements politely, using those linguistic tools like hedging. It's the language of instinct, not theory.
It really is.
By focusing on the specific details we discussed, from idiomatic expressions like how to communicate a bad service situation, like the whole experience was a disaster, I wish I had just stayed home, to understanding the strategic use of intonation and pauses for emphasis, you can elevate your comprehension and application of English significantly. You're building that instinctive ability to know what sounds right and, crucially, what sounds authentic in any given situation.
The ultimate goal here is to make your English feel effortless and genuinely authentic. Whether you are drafting a concise email to a client or sharing a funny, self-deprecating anecdote with a friend over coffee, it's about achieving competence across the entire emotional and professional spectrum of human communication.
So, we leave you with this final provocative thought, rooted in the functional framework we analyzed today. If language is constantly shifting based on context like urgency or emotional state, what unexpected low-stakes situation in your own life right now is the perfect scenario to practice a non-textbook English phrase?
That's a good question.
And specifically, which one of the functional phrases or structures will you choose to use? Will you practice the structure for acknowledging an opinion politely? Will you deploy a controlled expression of stress like, I'm feeling a little overwhelmed?
Or maybe use, you can't miss it, the next time someone asks you for directions.
Exactly. The only way to move past the textbook is to dive into the reality.